in 2025?
Numerous prices have.
Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous grocery prices have gone down.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you can't hear me. Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous grocery prices have gone down.
Some of them.
And in fact, we have seen inflation at 2.1% for the past 3 months.
Have you seen the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that is Donald Trump's own Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, that report that grocery prices were 2.4% higher at the end of 2025 than they were at the end of 2024. Trump's own Department of Agriculture has projected that those prices would climb higher in 2026. And under Donald Trump, families are paying more and more for groceries. So if you're just going to insult people by denying the facts that are out there and tell people this
may look like a routine policy disagreement over inflation, but it's actually a test of whether economic truth still has authority inside government. What's really being tested here is the line between political loyalty and institutional credibility. When basic cost of living data becomes negotiable, public trust in economic governance erodes. This raises broader questions about who defines reality in policymaking and what happens when data conflicts with power. In this video, we'll break down how this exchange reveals deeper risks to economic accountability, central bank independence, and democratic oversight.
Ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for a solid year while he ran for president, Donald Trump promised pretty much every day that he was going to lower costs on day one, if he was elected. Those were his words, not mine. So Secretary Bessent, you are one of the president's top economic advisors. Let's just start with a little truth-telling about the Trump economy 1 year in. Affordability is the top concern for Americans across the country. Donald Trump has called affordability, I want to get this right, a hoax. He's called it a scam. He's called it a con job. You are the Secretary of Treasury. You know the numbers. Is affordability a hoax, a scam, or a con job?
Senator, it may be a bit nuanced for you, but what President Trump is referring to is the media saying that the affordability crisis was generated by this administration when it was you and President Biden who destroyed the buying power of the American people. So there is an affordability crisis, and you were front and center in it.
So let me make sure that I understand. Donald Trump is not saying that affordability, what's happening to families right now, is a hoax?
He is saying that trying to lay the blame at this administration rather than the Biden-Warren economy is a hoax.
Okay, so it all happened before he got it. And everything that's happened since then, nothing is a hoax here.
21.5% cumulative inflation.
Let me just ask about what's happened in the 1 year that Donald Trump has been president. Last week, President Trump said, quote, "We have the groceries going down." Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous prices have.
Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous grocery prices have gone down.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you can't hear me. Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous grocery prices have gone down.
Some of them.
And in fact, we have seen inflation at 2.1% for the past 3 months.
Have you seen the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that is Donald Trump's own Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, that report that grocery prices were 2.4% higher at the end of 2025 than they were at the end of 2024. Trump's own Department of Agriculture has projected that those prices would climb higher in 2026. And under Donald Trump, families are paying more and more for groceries. So if you're just going to insult people by denying the facts that are out there and tell people they're doing great when they're struggling, I think that's just another way to say you don't have a plan to bring down these prices. You're not willing to admit the failures of the Trump administration.
Senator.
I will ask you a question in just a sec here. It's not just groceries. The numbers from Trump's own economic agency show that Americans are paying more for utility bills, more for health care, more for housing construction. Families aren't fooled by these lies. Mr. Secretary, you owe it to American families to own up what's going on. And Secretary Bessent, I have one more question for you while I have you here. You ran the search for Donald Trump's Fed chair nominee, and Trump promised, quote, "Anyone that disagrees with me will never be Fed chairman." Kevin Warsh got the nod last Friday, and then over the weekend, Donald Trump joked that he would sue Mr. Warsh if he failed to lower interest rates. At least, I think it was a joke. But just in case, this should be an easy one, Mr. Secretary. Can you commit right here and now that Trump's Fed nominee, Kevin Warsh, will not be sued, will not be investigated by the Department of Justice if he doesn't cut interest rates exactly the way that Donald Trump wants?
That is up to the president. Can you commit that you will?
I'm sorry.
Can you commit that you will not hold up?
He won't be sued if he doesn't drop interest rates, and he won't be criminally investigated.
The president also made a joke about you that I won't repeat, Senator Warren.
That was the
Oh, actually, I will. He said he had reservations.
If this was a joke, why not just say so?
It was a joke, and he made a joke about you too, Senator Warren.
Yes,
got a lot of laughs. Got a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to respond to that.
I do want to respond. I don't think the American people are laughing.
Is highly qualified.
They're the ones who are struggling with affordability.
Why don't you tell the nation what you told me, that you held up Chair Powell's renomination?
We're going to move on to the next one. Senator Rounds, the floor is yours.
Just moments ago, the room shifted. What began as another exchange in a congressional hearing hardened into something sharper, more revealing. Senator Elizabeth Warren pressed Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on a promise that had echoed across the country for years, that costs would come down on day one. And when the numbers didn't line up with the rhetoric, when facts collided with talking points, the silence that followed spoke louder than any prepared answer. This wasn't just a debate about grocery prices or inflation percentages. It was a confrontation over truth itself. Warren didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She let the record speak. Bureau of Labor Statistics data, Department of Agriculture projections, year-over-year increases that families feel every time they stand at a checkout counter or open a utility bill. And with each question, she forced a simple choice: acknowledge reality or deny it. Secretary Bessent chose deflection. When asked whether affordability was a hoax, a word the president himself had used, the answer drifted. It became nuanced. Responsibility was redirected backward, sideways, anywhere but the present. Inflation wasn't denied, but ownership of it was. And in that moment, something fundamental was exposed about how power now responds to pressure. Not with clarity, not with accountability, but with reframing and blame. Because affordability isn't an abstract concept. It's not a headline. It's the space between a paycheck and a bill. It's the calculation families make every month, quietly, without cameras. And when leaders dismiss that struggle as media spin or political theater, they aren't just arguing statistics, they're telling people their lived experience doesn't count. Warren's line landed hard for a reason. You don't have a plan. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was specific. A plan requires admitting there's a problem. A plan requires measurable goals and responsibility for outcomes. And what unfolded at that table suggested something else entirely. A governing philosophy built on insisting things are fine, even when the data says otherwise. But the exchange didn't stop at prices. It moved to something deeper and more unsettling: the independence of American institutions. When Warren raised the issue of the Federal Reserve, the tone shifted again. The president had promised loyalty tests. He had joked, or half-joked, about consequences for those who didn't comply. And when asked directly whether a Fed chair could face retaliation for refusing to cut interest rates, the answer wasn't no. It was deferral. That's up to the president. In a functioning democracy, that answer should stop us cold. The Federal Reserve exists to operate independently, insulated from political pressure precisely because interest rates affect every corner of the economy. When that independence becomes conditional, when loyalty matters more than judgment, the guardrails begin to crack. And when senior officials won't commit on the record to protecting those guardrails, the implication is clear. Power is being centralized, not checked. This is how systems erode, not all at once, not with a single dramatic announcement, but through moments like this, moments where accountability is requested and not given, where jokes replace assurances, where uncertainty becomes policy. Secretary Bessent insisted the president was joking, that it was all for laughs, but leadership isn't measured by punchlines. It's measured by what happens when institutions are tested, when facts are inconvenient, when the truth doesn't poll well. What this hearing revealed wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a clash of governing philosophies. One side arguing that facts matter, that numbers matter, that people deserve honesty even when it's uncomfortable. The other suggesting that perception is more important than reality, and that acknowledging failure is optional. And the American people are not fooled. They know when prices rise. They know when promises fall flat. They know when answers dodge the question. And perhaps most importantly, they know when leaders are speaking to them and when they're speaking past them. This is why moments like this matter. Not because of who scored a point or who went viral, but because they show us the direction of power. Whether it bends toward accountability or retreats into denial. Whether institutions remain independent or become instruments. Whether truth is treated as an obligation, or an inconvenience. Democracy doesn't collapse in one day. It frays in exchanges like this, where simple questions meet evasive answers, where facts are acknowledged only when they're useful, where responsibility is always someone else's. The hearing has moved on. The cameras will cut away. But the implications linger. If leaders cannot admit when costs rise, they cannot be trusted to bring them down. If officials cannot commit to protecting independent institutions, they cannot be trusted with unchecked authority. And if truth becomes negotiable, then accountability disappears with it. This is why we watch. This is why we document. This is why we don't look away when the answers get uncomfortable, because the health of the American system depends not on slogans, but on scrutiny. If you believe these moments matter, if you believe facts still matter, support our work. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.